1 minute ago, 47,000 people flooded the comment sections. Social media exploded. Britain is on edge tonight. Nigel Farage just accused the Prime Minister of turning the United Kingdom into a banana republic, and Westminster is in absolute chaos. The words still hang in the air. Members of Parliament are shouting. Cameras are flashing. And somewhere in Downing Street, Sir Keir Starmer is facing the most explosive political crisis of his premiership. This isn't political theater. This is real. This is dangerous. And if you're watching this right now, you need to understand what happened in the last 3 hours could change British politics forever. Subscribe now, because what happens next will shock you. It started at 2:47 p.m. this afternoon. The House of Commons was packed. Prime Minister's questions had just ended. MPs were filing out. Then Nigel Farage stood up. He had one sheet of paper in his hand. And when he began to speak, the entire chamber fell silent. What he said next ignited a firestorm. To understand why today exploded, you have to go back 3 weeks. December 1st. Sir Keir Starmer's Labour government announced sweeping new emergency powers that would allow ministers to bypass Parliament in national security situations. The bill was vague, deliberately vague. Opposition MPs called it authoritarian. Civil rights groups raised alarms. But Labour pushed it through using their massive majority. Starmer defended it at the dispatch box. This government will always put security before politics. But Nigel Farage saw something else. The Reform UK leader began calling it the dictator's charter. He warned that Starmer was consolidating power in ways no British Prime Minister had attempted in peacetime. Most of Westminster dismissed him. The usual Farage tricks, they said. But then the leaks began. December 10th. The Guardian published internal documents showing the emergency powers included provisions to restrict public gatherings, control digital communications, and detain individuals without charge for up to 96 hours. Not for terrorism, for threats to democratic order. The backlash was immediate. Even some Labour backbenchers began asking questions in private WhatsApp groups. Starmer's office went into damage control. A spokesperson claimed the documents were taken out of context, but trust was already cracking. December 15th. Reform UK submitted a formal challenge to the legislation. Farage held a press conference outside Parliament, looked directly into the cameras and said, "If this becomes law, Britain will no longer be a democracy. We will be a managed state." Social media erupted. #Banana Republic started trending. Young voters who'd never paid attention to Westminster drama suddenly started asking questions. Behind closed doors, tensions built all week. Sources reported heated cabinet meetings. Starmer was reportedly frustrated the narrative had gotten away from him. Advisors urged him to delay the final vote. But the Prime Minister refused. Backing down would make him look weak. This morning, the Conservative Party announced formal opposition. Rishi Sunak released a statement calling the legislation an overreach that threatens centuries of British liberty. By noon, protests gathered outside Parliament. Chants of "No to tyranny" echoed across Westminster Bridge, and Nigel Farage was watching, waiting. At 2:30 p.m., just before PMCAS ended, Farage requested an urgent point of order. The Speaker hesitated but granted it. Farage stood. Every phone in the chamber tilted toward him. The chamber was restless. Sir Keir Starmer sat on the front bench, arms crossed, face unreadable. Nigel Farage cleared his throat. "Mr. Speaker, I rise on a matter of constitutional gravity." The room quieted. Farage held up the single sheet of paper. "This morning, I received a leaked internal memo from the Home Office, dated December 18th. It outlines plans to use the emergency powers to suppress what the government calls coordinated disinformation campaigns." A ripple went through the benches. Journalists began typing furiously. "And do you know what qualifies as disinformation, Mr. Speaker? Criticism of government policy, organizing protests on social media, sharing unapproved narratives." Labour MPs began shouting, "Show the document. Where's your proof? This isn't democracy. This is a banana republic." He spat the words. The Prime Minister is building the architecture of authoritarianism in plain sight. The chamber erupted. Conservative MPs roared approval. Labour MPs screamed back. The Speaker hammered his gavel, shouting for order. Sir Keir Starmer stood abruptly, jaw clenched. He pointed directly at Farage. "The honourable member has once again shown his willingness to undermine this nation's security with baseless conspiracy theories and forged documents." "Forged?" Farage shot back. "Publish your denials, Prime Minister. Let the British people judge." Within seconds, video clips flooded X, TikTok, Instagram. #Banana Republic detonated 250,000 mentions in 15 minutes. Within an hour, over 1.2 million news channels cut to live coverage. Sky News showed split screens, Westminster chaos, growing protests outside. On X, former Conservative Minister David Davis posted, "Farage may be a provocateur, but he's asking the right questions." Labour MP Diane Abbott tweeted cryptically, "Emergency powers must have limits." In Manchester, a university student named Asha Patel filmed a TikTok from her dorm. "I didn't vote Labour for this. If Farage is right even a little, we should all be terrified." 800,000 views in 2 hours. In Essex, a retired teacher called into LBC radio, voice shaking, "I've voted Labour my whole life, 60 years. But this bill scares me." Even CNN's London correspondent went live. "What we're witnessing is a flashpoint." Farage has weaponized public distrust against a government struggling with credibility. Emergency meetings began. Labour whips scrambled to count votes. Sources said at least 8 backbenchers threatened to rebel. Conservative leader Rishi Sunak called an impromptu press conference at 4:15 p.m. today. Nigel Farage asked questions every British citizen should be asking. "I don't often agree with him, but on this, he's not wrong." The former Prime Minister had just validated Farage's attack. Downing Street released a statement. The Prime Minister categorically denies any intention to misuse emergency legislation. The memo is either fabricated or grossly misrepresented. But by p.m., protests outside Parliament had swelled to 3,000 people, chanting, waving signs. "Defend democracy. No emergency tyranny." Police formed cordons. Helicopters circled overhead. It wasn't violence but tension you could taste. The vote was scheduled for p.m., 1 hour away. And Nigel Farage was giving interviews to every outlet, repeating the same message: Britain is at a crossroads. Tonight, Parliament decides whether we remain a free country or become something else entirely. At 5:47 p.m., 13 minutes before the scheduled vote, something unprecedented happened. The Speaker of the House, Sir Lindsay Hoyle, suspended proceedings. MPs froze. The live feed cut to a holding screen. For 3 minutes, no one knew what was happening. Then word leaked. A whistleblower had come forward. A senior Home Office civil servant walked into the Speaker's office with a USB drive containing the full unredacted memo Farage referenced plus 17 additional documents. Her name was Claire Thornton. 14 years in civil service. Spotless record. She just committed career suicide to expose what she called the most dangerous overreach I've witnessed in government. At 6:02 p.m., Sir Lindsay Hoyle returned. His face was grave. "Honourable members, I have been presented with evidence that requires immediate consideration. I am postponing tonight's vote pending a full review by the Standards and Privileges Committee." The chamber exploded. This wasn't partisan shouting. This was chaos born from genuine uncertainty. Sir Keir Starmer rose, his face pale. "Mr. Speaker, this is a procedural ambush." Prime Minister Hoyle interrupted sharply. "I will not allow this House to vote on legislation when serious questions have been raised by credible sources. That is not an ambush. That is democracy." The rebuke was devastating. The Speaker had just publicly rebuked the Prime Minister. Starmer sat down. For 5 seconds, he stared straight ahead. Then he stood, gathered his notes, and walked out of the chamber without another word. Cabinet ministers followed. Faces grim. It was 6:09 p.m. The Prime Minister had just walked out during a constitutional crisis. Starmer walks it hit 400,000 mentions in 10 minutes. Video of his exit played on loop. Commentators called it a moment of historical significance. Outside, the crowd swelled to 6,000. When news of the postponed vote reached them, cheers erupted. Sky News went split screen. Protests. Farage giving a live interview. "This is what accountability looks like," Farage said, electric with triumph. A brave civil servant reminded the government they serve the people. Tonight, democracy won. Barely. Downing Street was in freefall. Sources described utter pandemonium. The Prime Minister sat alone in his office for 20 minutes, saying nothing. At 6:34 p.m., Claire Thornton appeared on Channel 4 News. She looked tired, afraid, but resolute. "I took an oath to serve the public interest. When I saw plans to monitor social media, to flag dissenting voices, to create lists of risks to social cohesion, I couldn't stay silent. This isn't about politics. This is about principle." The interviewer pressed, "Are you saying the government planned to spy on British citizens?" Thornton nodded. "Yes, not terrorists. Ordinary people expressing dissent. That's not security. That's control." Her interview 2.3 million views within 2 hours. BYPM. Labour backbench MP Zara Sultana posted, "I need to see these documents before I can support this bill." Rumours swirled that 15 MPs might defect. At 7:22 p.m. Downing Street released another statement, longer, more defensive. But it wasn't a denial. It was damage control. At 7:45 p.m. Nigel Farage held a rally outside Parliament. Thousands stayed despite the cold. Tonight, the people of Britain stood up. A whistleblower risked everything. The Speaker defended democracy, and the Prime Minister ran away. The crowd roared. But this isn't over. We need answers. We need accountability. And if we don't get it, then we need a new government. The chant began. New government. New government. Inside Westminster, MPs watched from windows. Some horrified, others energized, a few terrified, because everyone understood. Tonight wasn't just a political crisis. It was a breaking point. By PM, Britain had shifted, not dramatically, not with violence, but something fundamental had changed, a quiet realization that trust, once cracked, doesn't easily mend. The protests thinned as temperatures dropped. People drifted toward tube stations, but they didn't leave defeated. They left watchful. The Standards and Privileges Committee announced an emergency session for tomorrow morning. All 17 leaked documents would be reviewed. Claire Thornton would testify under oath. The vote on the Emergency Powers Bill, originally scheduled for tonight, was indefinitely postponed. Labour whips privately admitted they no longer had the votes. Sir Keir Starmer remained in Downing Street. No public appearance. No televised address. His aides briefed journalists off the record, but the silence felt deafening. On Newsnight, veteran journalist Laura Kunzberg spoke carefully. This isn't just about one bill. This is about a government that moved too fast, asked for too much trust, and discovered that trust is Britain's scarcest resource right now. Across Britain, reactions remained divided. In a Leeds pub, construction workers debated over pints. "I wanted change, but not this. Not surveillance," one said. His mate disagreed. "Farage is a liar. Always has been." On social media, #BananaRepublic remained the top trend past midnight. A viral TikTok showed Starmer's walkout set to dramatic music. 3 million views. But beneath the jokes, misinformation spread. False claims about martial law. Fake screenshots. The very chaos the emergency powers were designed to prevent was now unfolding. Claire Thornton went into protective seclusion. She faced potential criminal charges under the Official Secrets Act, though prosecuting her would be political suicide. Nigel Farage had never been more powerful. YouGov polling at 10:30 p.m. showed Reform UK surged 6 points to 19%, their highest ever. Labour dropped 4 points. Trust in Starmer personally had collapsed to 32, but experts warned against celebrating. Professor Sarah Collins from Oxford appeared on BBC Radio 4. "What worries me is what comes next. This chaos creates vulnerability. And Farage isn't a defender of democracy, he's an opportunist who saw an opening." By midnight, Downing Street's lights still blazed. The Prime Minister was meeting with cabinet members, trying to craft a path forward. 3 options were on the table: withdraw the bill entirely, amend it drastically, or double down and release all documents publicly. Each carried catastrophic risks. Across the nation, people went to bed uneasy. Not because institutions had collapsed, but because the implicit contract between government and governed, that fragile trust, had been strained, perhaps beyond immediate repair. In the morning, newspapers would scream competing narratives. The Times, democracy defended. The Daily Mail, PM's authority in tatters. The Guardian, surveillance fears collapse bill. But tonight, as Big Ben chimed midnight over a cold, restless London, one truth seemed undeniable. British politics had entered uncharted territory. And no one, not Starmer, not Farage, not the public, knew where this path would lead. The vote was postponed. But the reckoning had only just begun.